Unique people leading unique lives shape and inform Iowa City. This community is enhanced by these women and men who live in our midst, working, teaching, creating. Welcome to a series of conversations with people who have stories to tell. Join my guests and me, Ellen Buchanan, in a series of interviews called One of a Kind. My guest on One of a Kind is Steve West, businessman, philanthropist, community volunteer, and family man. A native of Iowa City, music has been an integral part of his life for almost 65 years. He currently is the chairman of West Music Company and president of Miyazawa Flutes Limited. His community involvements are numerous. President of the Iowa City Community Band, advisory board for the University of Northern Iowa School of Music, member of the Orchestra Iowa Board of Directors. He serves as president of Kirkwood Community College Foundation, past chair of the Iowa City Development Group, member of the Iowa City Rotary and Sunrise Optimist Clubs. He's the co-founder and chair of the International Foundation of Music Research, co-founder and treasurer of the Iowa Alliance for Arts Education, and co-founder and current member of the Music Achievement Council. Steve West's awards are many. Outstanding Individual Philanthropist Award from the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Distinguished Alumni Service Award from the University of Iowa, Distinguished Service Award from Kappa Kappa Psi, Presidential Award from the American Music Therapy Association, Sertoma Award of International Service to Mankind, and last but not least, Small Business Administrator Entrepreneurial Success of the Year Award. In 2010, he was named by the Iowa City Press Citizen one of the 150 people who've helped shape our community through its 150-year history. Steve and his wife, Victoria, have raised 3 children in our community, Andrew, Megan, and Ryan. Welcome to One of a Kind.
Thank you, Ellen.
Your story, I know, begins in Iowa City. It's so fun to interview somebody who was born and raised and educated in our community. So tell me about your parents, what brought them to Iowa City, and why music?
Well, it's a little complex,
but
right. It's good to being a native of Iowa City. Mm-hmm. There's not very many of us.
There aren't.
Well, the music stream throughout our family goes very, very deep. My father was a musician in southern Iowa. His parents had a band, a family band that went on for actually several generations before he left southern Iowa. There's an unusual story, a very interesting story about how Jaime Voxman, who the School of Music is named after, was from Centerville. He had been encouraged to go to the university and came to the university by his band director, Bill Gower. And Bill Gower was the band director who encouraged Pearl, after dropping out of school, to come back to graduate from high school in Centerville. Eventually, Bill Gower came up to Iowa City and became the director at City High, and then went on to become the brass instructor at the university. He told Pearl to come on up. There was need for his skill. He had trained him to be a repairman. He came up, went to the university, eventually actually taught at City High, and then opened up the store right before the war, unfortunately.
So the first store was where in Iowa City of West Music?
Well, the very, very first one was there was a joint venture between a gentleman called Pappy Hewitt and my father repaired, and he sold instruments. They opened right at 1941, called the Petersen West music store, and then that closed promptly after World War II broke out. And then when they reopened in 1945, they were over on Dubuque Street, at 14 South Dubuque Street. And Ebel Music opened up, actually it was a little late 40s, and Ebel Music was upstairs and West Music was downstairs.
So when did you move out to Coralville? When did West Music?
Well, it was during the urban renewal episode, or however you want to say it. They decided that the block that we had moved the store to over on Clinton Street was going to be a mall, so we were urban renewalized, and so we decided there was a supermarket out in Coralville that was vacant, and so we bought the building there, moved out. I thought it was the end of the world, but it turned out to be a perfect space for us, and our move to Coralville has been over 37 years ago. It's been a great move, and literally the city has kind of grown up around us.
Totally. So was your mother musical also, or did she just support your father in his pursuits?
She was quite, she was a pianist. She played and enjoyed that, but she was the bookkeeper for the first store, and was that all the way through up to the time that I was involved in the business after college. So she was
now you have a sister.
I do.
And her name is?
Sherry.
And were the two of you expected to follow along in this music path?
Well, not necessarily. I don't think we were ever said that. It was never understood that this is what we were going to do. Sherry received a education degree and also, I believe, an art degree, and then she went on to become being involved in museum design. And as it turns out, our national association, the International Association of Music Merchants, or music of music, decided that they were going to have a museum, and they did hire Sherry to put it together, and it's a great pride to the whole industry.
And you worked in the store when you were a little boy.
Yes, well, a family business is a family business.
Family business, of course.
Earlier on, I remember having contests with my sister of who can lick more stamps and get them on statements to send them out than the next person. And then I remember sweeping floors, of course. I was a custodian in the 50s when I was in junior high. I learned two important things. First, how to use a broom. And second of all, back then, everybody seemed to smoke, and decided it was a very dirty, filthy habit, and decided I'd never smoke. So it was probably some very positive things that came out of that.
That was at Central Junior High.
That's right.
You went to Horace Mann, then Central Junior High, then City High, and then University of Iowa. And you played in the band.
Sure.
And you played the piano, but your love was the clarinet. And is that true?
Well, yes. I didn't play the piano very well.
Oh,
I took piano lessons, but I
Okay.
didn't really play very well. And the clarinet was very enjoyable. And then I switched to bass clarinet as I got into high school and college, and then I still play that in the community band.
Now, you had an important trip, I read in the research, that kind of shaped a little bit of your life, that you were in the band and the State Department had you go. Tell the story to our viewers.
Well, it's a great story. Every young person in college should have the same experience. Unfortunately, that's not the case. This is 1966. The State Department, in their incredible wisdom, chose the University of Iowa Symphonic Band to take to Russia. And so it was a wonderful band, incredible musicians on it. We rehearsed for a whole semester, getting ready to go. Then, about the time we were about ready to leave, they shot down a U-2 spy plane over Russia, and decided that we were not as friendly, or they didn't want to be as friendly to the U.S. as perhaps they had thought. So the State Department, in their incredible wisdom, decided to send us to Europe. These 90-some university students sent us to Europe instead of going to Russia. And so we went 2 months to Europe, played in some 17 different countries, and then they decided that they would initiate relationships with Russia. We came back to Paris for another week to rehearse a new program, and then went to Russia for a little over a month. And so in more than 3.5 months, we saw Europe, Russia, and at that point I decided I enjoyed seeing the rest of the world. And so I came back. This is when I was a sophomore in college, and kind of tried to decide how I was going to do this again. And that has been somewhat the undercurrent of my life.
Of your travel.
Of my travels.
Your travels.
Yes,
so we'll get to that in a little bit. So what did you think you were going to do after graduating from college?
Well, that's a great question. It was during the Vietnam War. I had enlisted into the Army Reserves and gone on active duty while I was still in college. And so then when I came back, Victoria and I decided it was time to get married. It was back then you got married early. Now my kids seem to not understand that, but that's all right. Different times.
Exactly.
So when we had gotten married, and I graduated in 1969, and with a marketing degree, and looking at the jobs that were available, would be going out for larger corporations, doing a lot of moving and back and forth. At the time, Victoria had a job at Horseman, my old alma mater, and that seemed pretty good that she had a job. And Pearl, again, did not force by any means saying you had to do this, but I said, well, let's give it a try, and let's see if any of the skills that I brought to the table, shall we say, could help the company grow. And we tried it. It was a marvelous experience working with Pearl and Eleanor, and then 42 years later, here we are.
And we'll get to the expansion of West Music a little bit, but I want to talk about a little bit about your father's making flutes in the basement.
Yeah.
How did he learn to do this? And then this materialized into your great association, I would assume, with this gentleman from Japan.
Right.
Tell me that story.
Well, Pearl was well known for his repair skills, and he was a very, very skilled and very analytical individual. In addition to running a music store, he had in the basement of our house when we were growing up literally a flute manufacturing, all the machines, punch presses, drawing machines, whatever it is. And so he was fascinated with the flute. Though he was a clarinet and saxophone player, he was fascinated with how the flute was made. He thought he could improve it, the tuning and that type of thing, and so he set about trying to figure that out. And so virtually every night he went back down to the basement of our house and was working on this project. Started manufacturing flutes. They were good flutes. When I got involved in the business, I was a marketing guy. I'm not a manufacturing guy. I didn't have all the skill sets that he had as far as the technical side of it. I did learn repairing when I was working at the store, however, but I decided that even though it played very well, the flute did, it was not artistically or a piece of jewelry, shall we say. It looked okay, but it didn't look beautiful, and since many of the flutists are women, we needed to make sure it looked great. So in the early, actually mid-70s, I went to Japan. There was another flute maker in Japan that was exporting into the U.S. and doing quite well. And I was gutsy enough to think that we could do the same thing. So just by chance, we had set up a meeting to meet with Mr. Miyazawa. And he was about 3 years older than I was, a couple of kids, it seemed like at this point. And we struck a wonderful relationship. We got samples from him. My father, Pearl, analyzed them thoroughly, decided that this was the manufacturer. We had tested several manufacturers from Japan, and he decided this was the better of the manufacturing companies. So that started a relationship of 35 years ago, and we are still their exclusive distributor for North America as well as South America. And it's been a wonderful relationship.
But it's not only flutes, you do piccolos?
Yeah, Piccolos, another very, not to make these long stories, but,
no.
But when the wall came down in Germany, there was an incredible piccolo maker in a town called Marknenkirchen, which had been making piccolos for 7 generations. It had been cut off from the free world, shall we say, when the wall went up. And so when the wall came down in 91, I had a friend in Germany that was from this region. He and I and Victoria and actually Ryan all went to meet up with this piccolo maker. He had gotten his factory back from the government, and we again struck a wonderful relationship, which has gone on till today. We still are their exclusive distributors. He has unfortunately passed away, but his 3 children are running the factory in Marknenkirchen and doing a wonderful job. This is the 7th generation, going on 8 now, making piccolos. So it's a global market.
What a great story. So how did you transform this one store into, now you have 5 stores, e-commerce and websites, and I mean, how did this happen?
I'm not sure.
It's in your blood.
No, well, it kind of just evolved. No,
well, what started first? I know e-commerce came later, but
well, well, part of it is a drive to going back to that experience I had in college, traveling. I'm fascinated with other people, how they think, how they approach different problems. And I decided that I needed to expand the business a little bit so that I am able to travel a little bit more and to really see the world a little bit more. Yes, we're buying products, we're selling products, but also it's really much more. It's not a transaction, it's a relationship. And I rather enjoyed those diverse ways of thinking. And certainly we Americans may feel strongly about the way we approach things and the way we think, but there are various points of views on many subjects. So that was kind of the initial, in the early or mid 70s, two things happened that kind of inspired me. One was there was a kind of a tough recession at the time, and particularly there was a realignment of the agricultural economies here in Iowa, and I came to the conclusion that no matter how good we were doing and taking care of our customers and all the other things that were the right things to do, we were probably more dependent upon the price of corn and hogs than we were on our hard work. So I decided that we really, in conjunction with discussions with Pearl, that we really needed to diversify regionally and hopefully internationally. So that was the first trip for Miyazawa. That really had kind of sparked our interest. Once you learn how to do it, back then we had to write letters, you know, and we sent them to Japan, and a month later we'd get a reply, and then we had a wonderful, incredible invention called the thermal fax. Oh my gosh! You know, you could put it in this rolled up paper and come out yellow, but you know, you could get almost instantaneous messaging, and then of course nobody knows about those anymore, or much to say. But now obviously it's instantaneous with emails and all the other things. So that helped us internationally. Then geographically, we also. I think when I got in the business, there were 35 music stores in the state of Iowa. There was, and as small towns consolidated, so did music stores, and there were some opportunities that hadn't passed on to the next generation as Pearl and I had been able to. So we kind of expanded into other population centers, purchased some other stores in some cases, started new ones in other cases, and so that kind of evolved that way. But that way we could diversify. Increase obviously the amount of business, but we could also diversify our base, our product mix, and in some respects afford to be able to pay more specialized people to come work for our team and work on the team. So by doing that, we were able to really get you know, it's all about the people, you know, and who you can attract and instill, and we do great work because we have great people.
And you don't sell just instruments. You've got all these music programs now in your stores. In this what is this program for young children? Did you start that?
No, a gentleman by the name of Karl Orff in Germany before World War II developed the program. It's a very fascinating, very, very rewarding program. I saw it being taught by a wonderful woman by the name of Grace Nash, who unfortunately just passed away at 101 a couple of weeks ago.
See what music will do. Long
Absolutely.
Life,
I'm a believer on this. So originally I saw it, I said, gee, this would be wonderful for us to have a better preparation for children before they got involved in the instrumental programs in the 5th and 6th grade. So I brought Grace in and invited general music teachers in elementary schools from here in Iowa to come, and 50 of them showed up, and it was just a marvelous time. She was an inspired educator. All of the ladies, almost all of them were women, if I remember correctly, were also equally as inspiring. And I said, gee, this is really something we need to get involved in. Well, it turns out that I started getting lots of questions that I had no idea what the answers were to. And well, if I have an alto xylophone, do I need a soprano glockenspiel, or do I need this and that? And so I decided to hire an Orff specialist, a general music specialist, as the first. It was unusual to do at the time, but it evolved into a very important focus for us that we do on a international basis now in bringing Orff instruments and method books to. We publish a catalog that goes to every elementary school in the United States, and so this has been a very important competency for us, and we have a number of very specialists, major specialists in the area of Kodály, Orff, music therapy, all on staff, so that if there are questions of people in the field, educators and music therapists, that we can give them the correct appropriate answers and tell them what product or type of program would be best suited for what population and that type of thing.
Music drives you. I mean, I think it's one of your biggest themes in your life, besides travel and your family.
That is true.
If you had to go to a school board, and you know how programs get cut in the first, as we all know, it usually is art and music, what would you tell a school board about the value of music, education? I mean, a short answer, of course, but...
there's no short answer.
There's no short answer,
No.
all right, but anyway.
Well, yes, the theme of my life is music. I mean, I was attracted towards it as a student. It changed my life in college. When I got involved in the business, yes, it was a business, but it also was doing so many good things in that it was really opening up opportunities and doorways for, at that time, primarily young children or young adults to get involved in music. And you can see anecdotally that anyone that plays music or gets involved, whether they be young or old, it changes their life. It really resonates from within. Unfortunately, to your point, you have to kind of justify it to some people, but quite frankly, over the 40 plus years that I guess I've been involved, it's not, you don't have to defend it quite like we used to, because there is an extensive amount of scientific research that shows that not only are you developing a skill to play an instrument, but you're developing social skills, you're thinking, cognitive thinking, your complex thinking, working as a group, all kinds of things that you get in playing an instrument, whether it be an instrumental instrument, a piano, or whatever. So the first thing is just for the pure satisfaction and enjoyment of the individual. Unfortunately, many adults think that you have to play to impress somebody, but really the only person one has to impress is yourself.
Right.
And I know you're a pianist, and that's why you play. And it's a great way of relaxing and enjoying yourself, your inner harmony. So with that, there are lots of things. One of the, from a school board standpoint, there are, depending on if they've never been what I would call, if they've not experienced music or anointed in what music does to the individual, then yes, you have to approach them in different ways. I was involved, and it's a wonderful website called supportmusic.com, which when I was chairman of our trade association, we put that up so that mothers, fathers, teachers, school boards, anybody that wants additional information on the research, on what happens, why it's important, it's all on one website so that everyone worldwide can now access it. If there are still a few believers out there, or non-believers should I say, that music is an important part of the total education process. It's just a very important component.
And it's something you still do. You're in the community band. Do you love it?
I do.
You love it.
I'm the president of the community band because I got to have some place to play.
That's right. And you play, how many, I read about 10 concerts a year?
About
10?
eight, yeah. Eight during the summer and one for Christmas. And
brings you a lot of pleasure, doesn't it?
Well, it does, and it's wonderful. I mean, if music is great for young people, which historically when I got involved in the business, that's what we did. You know, we started kids playing. But then after high school, there really weren't a lot of places to play. There were some community bands, but you know, now we have community bands for adults to play. We have the New Horizons bands,
and
which
you got that started here, Cedar Rapids and
Cedar Falls, yeah, which is a wonderful. If you want to see the power of music, show the glee and the fun that everyone's having in the New Horizons.
Do you have to audition?
No.
You just can show up.
Well,
with
I
your
don't know.
instrument?
Don Kaufman, the head of the one here, and he's a pretty tough taskmaster.
Oh, is he? Okay.
He's real easy. Yeah, they're having a great time. They actually have 2 bands now, so everyone can get in.
I always ask my guests who or what has had a major influence on your life.
Well, I think we obviously...
We know music
Yeah,
has.
music is one. Well, you know, my father, Pearl, was a very soft-spoken fellow that was very encouraging to me. He allowed me to try new things. He didn't run with a tight rein on me initially when I came into the business. I certainly appreciated that, and that allowed me to do a little experimentation in some new markets and new areas. So I think obviously your parents are always very, very important. there are a number of people in our industry, but also citywide, that have been wonderful mentors for me growing up. And the lesson to take away is that everyone should and could and needs to be a mentor to anyone and everyone. So I don't know that there's one, but certainly I am who I am because of the people that I was able to be touched by while I was growing up. And by the way, Iowa City is the perfect place as far as I'm concerned too.
Yeah, and I said in the introduction, your wife's name is Vicki, and you have 3 children. How did you meet Vic? How did you and Vicki meet? And then tell me a bit about your children, where they are and what they're about.
Well, Vicki, now known as Victoria.
Oh, Victoria.
But depending on well, no.
Okay, it's okay.
It goes back and forth now.
Okay.
But which is kind of an inside joke for us. We met right after coming back from Russia. I went and worked at a summer resort up in Wisconsin, and she was a waitress and I was a busboy. And so we met there. She was in education at Mount Mary College up in Milwaukee. She graduated actually before I did, and so she ended up getting a teaching job here in Iowa City. And then we got married about a year after that. She's from Watertown, Wisconsin originally. Because I married a very smart lady, I had 3 very smart kids. And
the eldest is
Andrew, and he lives in Boston, is married, works for McKinsey Consulting, a global consulting firm, went to WashU and Northwestern, and is doing great, and also a very good musician.
Oh, good.
And then Megan, I refer to her as my favorite daughter, but now I have a favorite daughter-in-law as well. Both of them, by the way, are Megan. She went to Vanderbilt and played the flute, now plays electric bass, and she works for Microsoft and lives in Seattle.
Seattle, okay.
And does a little traveling every once in a while with us. And then Ryan also plays the piano, and he was on the East Coast for about 11 years, went to NYU and Harvard before he came back a couple years ago, and he is doing a great job. We're really enjoying the opportunity. Brought back some nice new skills, new opportunities, very into the e-commerce side of it, which we were already heading that way, but it's certainly been a great joy to work with him and see him continue to bring in new ideas.
Now, the other theme I talked about and you mentioned and touched on was travel. You love to travel. You just got back from, you said, a big trip to Bhutan and China. You go to China. How many times have you been to China? What is this wanderlust you have?
That's a good way of putting it. Well, you know, as much as and I, you know, when you travel and it's been the same with you, and you say where you're from Iowa City. I said, well, why would you live there? I said, because it's the best place in the world to live. I like traveling, but I always like coming home, because Iowa City is that wonderful confluence of a city, but also something that is not highly stressed as it would be if you were living in a large metroplex or something. So why do I like to travel? I think part of it is to meet the people. Again, it's always about relationships. I mean, if it's in business side of it, it's about the relationships, because in doing foreign commerce, a contract really doesn't mean anything if they don't believe in you and you don't believe in them, and they have trust in you and you have trust in them, then the relationship will never work. So that is very interesting to see different cultures and get to know those people on their level and understand how to work together and make something that's more valuable than if we worked apart. So that's part of it. Part of it is understanding. This last year, this is my 12th trip to China, go there every year. Part of it is just to see how much they've evolved. The Chinese want the same as we do, a better life for their children, better education, and I'm always amazed at how quickly they've changed It took us 50 years to get what they've done in probably in 10 years as far as evolving into this urban industrial technology economy. But this year then I like going to the next frontier. So this year after that we took the train from China to Tibet. Very interesting, had not been to Tibet before. Fascinating. Then we went on to Nepal and Kathmandu, spent a few days there, flew up to Everest, didn't hike up to Everest. And then, of course, we went to Bhutan. Bhutan's a small kingdom up in the Himalayas, about 700,000 people. Fascinating. It's kind of, I describe it as a mini Switzerland. And it's a beautiful, and the people are marvelous. And
you really enjoyed your time there then?
I did. Very, very nice people, and it's all about the people.
It's all about the people. Do you have a favorite place on this planet besides Iowa City and Coralville?
There you go. That's good.
Besides,
that's kind of tough. I mean, for different reasons. I mean, I was before that. Victoria and I went to Tanzania earlier this fall, and that was the people are also very genuine, very special. It's hard to say one is better than the other. I mean.
Or
maybe
favorite.
It's always my last.
Or maybe it's your last trip.
Yeah, maybe it's always my last trip. That's exactly right, because that's the most fresh in my mind. But I'm not sure that I have actually a favorite. But as long as I can continue to be mobile and able to travel, I'm sure I will.
Well, it's a wonderful story you have. And my last question is, I read all about your accomplishments and the things you've given back, and I know you feel very passionate too about community colleges. Of all of the things you've done for the community, are there one or two that has meant the most to you?
You know, that's hard. I think you evolve as you go through life. And you know, the connection to music and making sure access to music at every part for all populations are very, very important, whether it be, you know, music therapy perhaps is one of the things that we haven't talked about that I'm the most proud of, because that really opens up. If you want to know the power of music, see it in the hands of a music therapist, in front of special populations, could be any age and all ages. It's a very, very special moment in time for that individual, but it's something that I'm very passionate about. And I'm happy to say we have 14 full-time music therapists on staff that are delivering music therapy services to all populations, from the newborn to hospice and that type of thing. So that being said, the education of a person is the most important thing we can all do. I have been passionate about community colleges, but I'm also obviously passionate about my alumni and other Regents institutions in the state of Iowa. The community colleges right now in this day and age are, I think, providing a very, very good access to education that is needed by a broad section of our community, of our state, of our country. And by doing so, I think we're going to have a better, stronger community and state by having great community college systems and being able to get people involved in education that historically haven't had the opportunity or the financial wherewithal to be able to go to college. This is important for us. It's important as I get older and somebody else is going to take care of me. I want them to be well educated so we as a society can continue to prosper.
Absolutely.
And go forward too.
Those are great answers. I love the one about the music therapy. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being my guest.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for asking me.
It's been a delight. My guest on One of a Kind has been Steve West, chairman of West Music Company and president of Miyazawa Flutes. Under Steve's leadership, West Music has grown to 5 retail music stores and education centers in eastern Iowa and western Illinois. His accomplishments are extraordinary and his honors numerous. With the belief that music makes for a better life, he practices what he preaches. He plays 8 or some more concerts a year in the Iowa City Community Band. Words used to describe my guest are entrepreneurial, philanthropic, world traveler, genuine, a family man, and passionate about music and music education. Steve West is one of a kind.